Friday night is Sports Talk with Zeca Marques. Tonight I'm looking forward to an exciting chat. None other than someone that is played for Banyana, coached Banyana, FIFA technical director or instructor, instructing the women's football with CAF. Known in football, the Fran Hilton Smith. Fran, welcome to to my chat. Thank you for accepting the opportunity to come through. I know you've put in a lot of time. You live out in the east. Now you're in the west. Fran Hilton Smith.
Thank you, Zeca. It's a pleasure for me to be here, an honor. I'm really happy to be on your show, and thanks for the invite.
Thank you. No, I must thank you. Fran, let's start off. Before you even got involved with coaching, you played football. I remember seeing you play football. Sarelhatting Park, Primrose, many, many years ago. Tell us about your journey through that.
Well, many years ago, I started in the late 60s into 70s, playing when I was small. Where I lived, there seemed to be far more boys than girls, so I just started playing with the boys. Of course, I was put in the goals to start with, but then as I learned fast with the boys, I got onto the field, and that led to me to becoming a very good player. I was a left-footed left wing most of my life, and then in the early 70s we started with the league. As you said, we played out of Sarelhatting Driehoek Stadium, and I progressed from there to playing provincial soccer for then Eastern Transvaal. I played in Eastern Transvaal for 10 years, played 1 or 2 years in Southerns, and that took me on lots of journeys, and I had a great time. Unfortunately, we couldn't play international football then because of apartheid, but I made the national team. So I had overall a very successful playing career.
Was it a natural transition from ending football as a player to coaching? Did you coach when you were younger? How was that transition?
Yeah, it became kind of natural because I decided we didn't have many coaches and no woman whatsoever. So it just struck me one day that maybe I should get into coaching and try and see if I can't encourage more women to coach. So that's what I did. I started coaching with the men, of course, some of the big boys back in the day, Ted and Shakes and Trot and all the guys. I was the only woman there, and I had to really shape up because, you weren't given any easy path. You had to do the same as the men. But because I was a good player, I could keep up, and I did all my licensing certification with all the guys, and became a top qualified coach, which led eventually, after I'd had teams of my own I coached, I became the manager coach of a team called Champions, and this led eventually to me being appointed as the national coach of Banyana in 2000. I coached the team then, but I had before that quite a bit of a coaching career.
Now, we talk Banyana in those days compared to now. The resources were obviously not the same.
Yeah, no, we had nothing. I mean, the girls got leftover kit from Bafana with on the back Dr. Kumalo and whatever. It was really rough times. The kit were too big. We had one kit, the manager then of the team, Dara Carroll, we kept that. We had one set of kit, one tracksuit, and we kept that for 5 years because there was nothing else for us. So we had to just make do, and the girls got paid nothing. There was, when the team first started travelling, when we got back into CAF after 93, 95, the team would travel to Angola and Nigeria with just the manager, Dara, the head of delegation, and the coach. There were no support staff, no money, no medical, no nothing. The team was just sent off. It was actually quite horrific, and it's one of the things that made me write my book, actually, was to discuss the really rough time that Banyana went through in the beginning compared to today.
Do you find that those experiences made you a better coach? Because you had to look for resources. I mean, you weren't just a coach. You were everything.
No, that's the truth. I was everything, and even in the 20 years I spent at SAFA, I worked alone. I didn't have a department, I didn't have a PA, a secretary, anything. I worked alone, doing everything from managing, most of the time coaching, and not just Banyana. Then we got Basetsana, the under 20 came along. I was coaching and managing that. And then under 17, Bantwana came along. So I was responsible for everything in women's football just by myself. So it was very difficult, but I'd made a difference, and I felt I could keep making a difference. And even though it was a huge struggle, it took about 10 years before I was employed full-time by SAFA. I worked out the boot of my car for nothing. But I believed in women's football. I'd seen the US soccer winning the first Women's World Cup in 91. And it just so impressed me watching it on TV and where they were, that it just gave me such a burning desire to see our girls playing on the world stage. And since that, the rest of the Women's World Cups, 95, 8, whatever, I haven't missed one, thanks to FIFA, being a FIFA instructor. They invited me still to all the World Cups. I was there last year. But watching world football gave me the passion and the drive to carry on and develop football here. And that's what I've done. And I believe now I've left a hell of a legacy for someone to follow with regard to Banyana, coaching, leadership, etc.
I must be honest, when we talk about women's football in South Africa, you cannot leave your name out. You are, for me, the epitome of what created women's football and what brought women's football to where it is today. So let's forget the dark ages of football and SAFA. Let's push forward to 2024, women's football, structured organisation, leagues. Is it professional? What is the new idea with this football? Because people talk about, it's professional. What is the new women's football looking like at the moment, and what are the opportunities for youngsters?
Okay, I'll start back when I was coaching Banyana. I realised that if we didn't have an academy, some structure for the girls, we were going nowhere, because they'd come to camp, they'd be injured, they weren't well fed, they weren't well educated. So 24 years ago I started an academy at Tux for the girls and brought in 25 girls, and they lived there, were trained, and I think that made a huge difference in the future, the development of women's football, Banyana. And in fact, when we won the AFCON in Morocco 2 years back, 15 of the girls that were in that team came from the High Performance Centre. And when we went to the World Cup, we had 14 from the High Performance Centre. And many of those girls now are playing professional football now. The Tembis, the Lindas, the Cezani twins, so many of them are now professional, and I think that's because of the development I put in, and not only of players, of coaches. When I finished coaching, I realised there were no women coaches, so I sourced and tracked down former Banyana players and started training them as coaches, and now we have 23 women who have their CAF A, which is more than any other country in Africa. And they all coaching the national teams, like Desraelis and Piwi Dludlu, Tabileng Madiko, etc., are now top coaches. So all of this, it's a chicken and an egg thing, a snowballing thing, that you now have competent people coming through, players who are well trained. And hence we went to the World Cup, we've been to the Olympics, and our players have been scouted by overseas countries. And now we have, I think, more women playing in Europe and Americas than the men. And the women are the African champions. We must not forget that. Desiree Ellis, 4 times African coach, woman coach. Janine van Wyk, the most highest cap player ever in Africa. And these players, Janine, Tembi, the coaches, all came through my development, what I envisioned to be the way forward. We also had for many years, I call it the lifeblood of women's football, Sassel, who started the Sassel League many years ago. That's made it competitive. And of course now we have the Hollywood Bets also making it competitive. Unfortunately, women's football is still very much amateur here and in lots of Africa. And that's a problem because teams struggle, there's not enough sponsorship. But our players are doing well and making a mark all over the world. And many of them are now really earning good money, playing professional football. And more of our players are being scouted.
It's interesting you say that there's more ladies playing in Europe and all over the world than men. The scary part is that men have been there for 100 years and we can't get it right. And you, in the space of 10 years, have got it right. What do you think is the secret?
Well, to have a structured plan, certainly, and to ensure, as I said, many of the players who are overseas have come through the ranks of the under-17, the under-20, Banyana, to have a structured pathway. I think you need a pathway in football. You need to put in the hours, the time. You need to have good coaching. You need to have good competition. And I think that's what we've had in recent times. And that's why the women are, I mean, if you look at it, which we don't often want to look at it, the men last won the AFCON in 96. The women, as I said, are the African champions. So it tells you that I've been doing something right for the 20 years I worked at SAFA, because the women are really being very successful, not just on the field, in coaching, in leadership, in refereeing. We have some of the top referees. Kona Makalima is a CAF FIFA referee. So I've tried to develop women as much as possible in all spheres, and not just in South Africa. I do a lot of work for COSAFA, the Southern African countries, the 14, in leadership, in coaching. I do a lot of work for CAF in the same fields, because I want to ensure that women have an opportunity to take their rightful place in football.
Friend, tell me, what do you think is the difference between a woman footballer and a man footballer? What makes the difference mentally? Because women become successful very quickly and men in the last 100 years still can't get it right. What do you think is the challenge for men compared
Well,
to
there's
women?
a lot of aspects. It's a question I often get asked. But I think with women, I've found anyway, that the priorities for them is looking after their family. I mean, I know many of the players like Tembi, etc., bought their parents, built them a house, a car. They focus more on stabilizing things, whereas I think it's sort of often spoken about the guys, when they start making big money, they want a fast car, they want a girlfriend, they want to have a great life, and the priorities are different and often not where they should be prioritizing. I think that is something I've seen in the football. I don't know if it's a norm or what, but certainly I think the women are more intent on saving money, etc., because probably they've struggled much harder to get some money than the men who get paid, you know, big salaries in the Premier League. The women don't get that.
Would you say it's a question of responsibility? The women are more responsible than men.
Well, they are. I don't want to start a riot now, but yeah.
I think we could go down those lines. I'm the man, so I can say that.
Yeah, true.
Very good. So, Fred, the youngsters of today, the young aspiring footballers, and there's quite a few, because I noticed there's more and more girls wanting to play football. What advice would you give them as far as wanting to get involved? What are your suggestions? If you want to sit in front of there's 30 girls that want to play football, what would you be telling them?
Okay, I think now, because of the success of Banyana, under 17 have been to 3 World Cups, and women now playing professional football, I think parents now are much more keen for their girls to play football. I had a lot of resistance in the beginning, especially cultural issues. Girls can't play football, they must stay at home and cook and clean and get married and what. A lot of that's changed. Parents now want their girls to play football because they can see the difference. For me, a big problem is that we don't have a national school football league. That is absolutely crucial. We have isolated. You have a big project like JVW that's run by Janine and Lauren, who's the Banyana manager, and they have like 250 school teams in our school. So it tells you that girls want to play football at school, and we need to have it structured so that they can start playing structured football, competitive football at a young age. And I think that is a priority for the future.
Would you say that the solutions are out there? Everyone knows what has to be done. But the people that have the authority to make the decision don't do it. But my question is, why?
Well, of course, when it comes to development, it's a costly affair. You need people in charge. I mean, I remember when I was the technical director with Neil Tovey, we had people in all the provinces, technical advisors, selecting and scouting and doing development, and that has fallen away. So I think we need to bring that back again, that you have structures where you can do grassroots and development on a much higher level. And specifically in women's football, I know from my years there, is that women's football is seen as a cost factor. It's a cost factor. That's why many PSL clubs still don't have a women's team, because women's football doesn't bring in money, it costs you money. So I think the powers that be need to put far more interest into development. And of course the new Minister of Sport, Gayton, is really stressing that. He's seen it for himself, that there isn't enough development, and he's wants school sport, everything happening in the schools, and he's correct.
I know you use the word costing. It's a costing if you don't know how to work effectively.
Yes.
If you don't have a vision, if you don't have credibility. Because there are companies out there, I'm almost quite sure, that would be more than pleased to get involved in sponsoring ladies football and girls football. The problem is you don't have the credibility and you don't have the people with vision. Now, when you have those two factors, that's a recipe for disaster. I know in Portugal now, and I was talking to the chairman of Estoril, they've implemented every Premier League club has to have ladies football. Imagine this happens in South Africa. Would we be ready for that?
Well, it's a rule. I mean, CAF have brought in a rule, it's not even negotiable, that if you want to compete in CAF competitions, you have to have a women's team. But, of course, the loophole there is that not all the teams qualify for CAF competitions. So that's why they haven't kind of implemented it. Yes, Sundowns have, and their women's team are African champions. Royal AM, TS Galaxy are a few of them. And, of course, you have the varsities that have a huge advantage too. Tuks, UJ, UWC are second in Africa. They represented Africa this year at the Champions League and won it. So they have an advantage, but the little teams like the JVWs, the Lindelani, etc., who don't have PSL clubs are really, really battling to survive. But I think that at the high level, you need marketing. You've got to have a marketing department fully fledged out there, as you well said, sourcing sponsors, Ghana sponsors, making efforts to get sponsorship. It's there. If rugby can get it and cricket and whatever, then football must be able to get it as well, especially in women's football. I mean, look at the PSL. They have, for the men, look what the clubs get every month, massive millions of rand. But the women's teams, Hollywood are doing their best, but they one entity. Sasol are doing their best, but also they have a lot of ground to cover, and they have many sponsorships to consider as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting we talk about sponsorships, and to me at one stage Sasol was
Yes.
when you spoke about ladies football, it was Sasol.
Yes.
And there are so many brands worldwide out there that are ladies driven. It is easy to get brands
Absolutely.
to get involved. However, you need to create a platform for that. And you need vision to drive that. And unfortunately, there's no vision. That's the biggest issue. And that's why when I look at the European market and I watch games now on TV, ladies football almost every day, and those stadiums are full. But then you see the marketing, you see the brand supporting them as well, because it's organized, it's structured. There's a vision to try and take football to the next level. Fan, so that's on that football side. What is your participation in FIFA and CAF? Where do you come in there? Where is your role? What do you play?
Well, in 2000, when I was coaching, I took South Africa up to second behind Nigeria, and we were doing very well. So a lady who was in charge of FIFA contacted me, Tatjana Henny, and said, "Who are you? Where do you come from? Whatever." And we got talking. I told her my background, that I'd done all my coaching, etc., was in charge of women's football. And she said, "Well, would you like to come and be a FIFA instructor and travel the world for us, developing women's football around the world in developing countries?" So I said, "Well, what a pleasure. I mean, that's something you dream about." So I went off and started in Iran, which I was very nervous to go to, but it was wonderful. And I've spent most of my life going around the world for FIFA to developing countries like Thailand, Trinidad and Tobago, Vanuatu. I've been to anywhere and everywhere, doing development for them, and also I worked for them for all the World Cups, doing the technical reports. So all that information I could bring back here and ensure that our national teams were on a par with the rest of the world. I had close connections with US Soccer, spent time camping with their national team. So all that info I fed back here, not just into women's football, men as well. I've worked very closely with Sarami Letswaka, Tabu Sanong, even when Stuart Baxter was there, Steve Compella. We used to share these thoughts, and they also took my thoughts from the world football. So it was very beneficial. And then CAF scouted me and said, "Well, come and do women's football for CAF." So I did that for about 15 years. I was on the CAF technical committee for 10 years, the only woman to ever serve there and the only South African. So I was on the CAF technical for 10 years and going around the whole of Africa. I've been to just about every country to coach coaches there. And that's why I think the standard of African football has improved so much. And the fact of the matter is that the Women's World Cup last year in Australia and New Zealand, it was something I dreamt about but never thought it would ever happen. That little South Africa, Morocco, Nigeria got through to the last 16 at the Women's World Cup before the big guns, US champions, world champions, China, Brazil, England, etc. These three African countries got to the last 16 in the world. So that tells you that what I've been doing, trying to change things, it has had some effect, because we are now succeeding. The three highest players in the world, and we comparing with US, Sweden, Denmark, the big guns, are Africans. The highest player in the world is from Zambia.
Wow.
The second one, Barbara Banda, Zambia, and the third, Tembi Kgatlana from South Africa. So what does that tell you? We succeeding, and Tembi has come through my program. So
What are the challenges? We know, besides South Africa, because we have the facilities here, but besides South Africa, what are the challenges in Africa for ladies football?
well, all the same problems. And you know, when I started traveling for FIFA, I realized that these problems are not just South African, they're world problems, even in big developing countries like the Netherlands and Sweden. Everyone has their problems, but in Africa, one of the biggest problems still is the culture that women shouldn't be playing football. That's still a big factor. Sponsorship is a big factor. Structure, having the opportunity to play is a big factor. Not enough women coaches. So we got to keep working at that. And CAF, the African body, keeps trying to do these things.
Now, you spoke about the ladies wanting to play. If there aren't enough ladies, you can't put teams together. You can't create a league. Do you find that is another challenge?
Not anymore. It used to be, and when it wasn't acceptable for girls to play football, many of them started playing with the boys. And that was actually very good in retrospect because they learned much faster, they learned better. So many of them, for many years, started playing with the boys. But now I think we have a lot of leagues in the regions, in the LFA. There's a lot of struggles, of course. But we do have a lot of teams that have popped up. I must say that. And now with us having such big stars in the world, every little girl wants to play football.
Do you think role model, and we have one now, are important to take it to the next level, to create the traction?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's what I always used to say. When we started off and we had the first team in 93, 4, 5, through that time, if you'd say to like Portia Medise or Carbozita, who's your role model? Then they'd say, oh, Dr. Kumalo or Shoes, and they were even called that, like Fakili Satoli was called 16 Valve and all these men's names. But now if you ask a girl, who do you want to be like? They'll say, Tembi Kgatlana, Janine van Wyk, girls, big stars now, Linda, etc., Kaylin Swart, the goalkeeper, their role models now are women, and that's absolutely fantastic. That's what we want.
We spoke earlier on, or you spoke earlier on, about the girls playing with boys. Up to what age should they start, and up to what age should they finish playing? Because there's this question about the 12-year-old, and then from there onwards no more for different reasons. What is your take on that?
Well, for me, I think, and it happens all the time, I know when I watch my little grandsons who are now big playing, when they started 5, 6, 7, there were girls there, and that's what we wanted. And they can start at any age, it's better for me, and they can play, in my opinion, and there's no hard, fast rule. They can play as long as they feel they can. So if they feel physically they can still compete with the boys when they're 13 or 14, that's the factor, really. And we had a little girl, Mandy de Ruja. She was a goalkeeper, and she played in the under-16 boys team, provincial, when she was 16. So it depends entirely. It's an individual case. And of course, the boys become generally more physical now, as they go through the growth development. And the girls sometimes physically can't compete. So to me, it's purely a personal choice.
What position, if any, are the most challenging for ladies to play?
Goalkeeper. There's no two ways
Why?
about it. Well, for many reasons, physical attributes of women makes it very difficult for them to play goalkeeper. They can get injured in tender parts of their body. It's very hard. It's very difficult to find women goalkeepers and to keep them in the sport, because physically it's quite challenging. But we lucky. We've had some very, very good goalkeepers, really. So we've been lucky.
This is probably a strange question, but I have to ask you this one. Does a girl does she need to have this tomboy mentality, or can she still be the lady and still play football?
Okay, that's a question I often get asked. But if I can go back a bit, when generally we started with women's football in the country, and specifically with the cultural issues, it wasn't sort of accepted that girls can play football. And there were only boys' teams in the main, especially in the townships. If I look at Portia Medice, Gloria Klaleli, the early days, Kabu, etc., in the townships, to play with the boys, they had to try and look like the boys
Oh, wow.
to
Okay.
fit in, you see, because sometimes if the boys thought they were girls, they wouldn't let them play with them because culturally this was a no-no. So many of them adopted that style of walking and dressing and whatever. So it was kind of, you can understand it. But nowadays that we have women's leagues and women's this and women's kit on top of it was I fought for that for many years because until not long ago the women got men's soccer kit. So of course they're going to look like boys if they're wearing boys' kit. And I had to fight like crazy, I can tell you, with Adidas, Nike to bring in women's cut. And it's only not many years ago that we got that. So nowadays the girls can look like girls to play. And I mean, if you look at someone like Amanda Dlamini, who was the Banyana captain, she's a TV presenter. Look at the femininity. So they don't have to now look like boys to play. That to me is a major difference.
Wow. You spoke about the women's cut. Is this different? Is it a bit more tapered? I suppose?
Yes,
Is that so?
absolutely. It's the shorts, the shirts are tapered for women. They have a different neckline. Boots, there's women's boots now that are designed specifically for women. So, I mean, these are all factors that contribute to making the sport seem a bit more feminine, you know, compared to wearing a Bafana kit, you know, hanging down to your knees and
The hand-me-downs.
jerseys. Yeah,
Your
the
hand-me-downs.
hand-me-downs.
Hand-me-downs. Now, I watch ladies football, and sometimes as a coach, I look at the way they run, the coordination and things like that. Is there a difference between the men and the ladies? I think the men are more fluid in their actions. The ladies aren't. Is that because of starting training too late? What is your opinion?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that influence that. Certainly starting too late. But I think a big factor that is still very much under discussion is the actual physique of the woman, that they have broader hips. Their leg structure is different for, you know, carrying a child, whatever. And this has led to many incidences in women's football of a cruciate ligament tears.
Wow.
Many women have lots of cruciate ligaments, and they've never quite finalized what actually causes that. But one of the factors they consider is the physique of the woman. So when you're doing your training, your warm-ups, whatever, you have to focus a lot on exercises that increase the stability of the hips, the knees, etc. So
Wow.
you've got coaching woman is, in my opinion, a specialized field, because I learned something long ago, and I always say that to my men coaches, and I still, you know, psychologically, women think differently to men in many aspects. And one thing I used to say was, in a team, if two boys are arguing about something, they'll push each other or thing and they'll leave it. But if it's two women and they're arguing about something, they hold grudges and they think about it. So if I've got the ball and you're the best option to pass the ball to, and there's another player, not such a good option, I'll probably pass the ball to them because I'm fighting with you. So you've got to know these aspects to be able to talk and communicate with your players, your women players, to get the best out of them.
So I agree with you, and this is why coaching courses are not adequately programmed for that at the
Yeah.
moment. It's a one size fits all. Do you think there'll be a time where coaching courses will be for ladies football, or
Well,
should incorporate that?
Yeah. Well, what I did was when I decided to coach or get more women coaches, I did a lot of courses specifically for women only. And even now, they've just had a C license for women only, where you can focus more on the aspects that pertain specifically to women's football, like what I've just discussed about the physique, the mental challenges or awareness, and emotions is a massive thing. The emotionally, women feel and think differently to men. It's life. I mean, you have a wife and people have boyfriends, and people react differently if you're a man or a woman. So I think that having courses, at least some of it, specifically for women, is very important to focus on those elements. But also they need to also interact with the men so that they can relate and link.
Speaking about the emotions, what type of emotions that highlights or stands out for you the difference between the men and women?
Okay, well, when it comes to coaching, a thing I've learned is if you have a male coach in women's football and they shout and scream at the girls drop their head and they don't play. Whereas boys often, not all the time, this is a bit of a generalization, boys sort of don't get so upset about it, but girls get very upset, drop their head, and then they don't want to play. Whereas boys sort of carry on with the game. So it's little things like that are generalizations, but are important. And girls, if you shout at them, could end up crying, but boys too. But
Yeah.
you just find it with girls, you have to have a way of coaching them, really.
So, as a man, and you're coaching girls football, one of the priorities is obviously to be sensible to the emotions of the female.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have that skill, it's going to be difficult to. Actually, in the long term, you'll do more harm than good.
Yeah, no, I agree. And also, if we get into the nitty-gritty, when you're coaching women, you have the whole issue of their monthly cycles, menstrual cycles, and that causes another whole kettle of fish that you have to be aware of, that they can be depressed, they don't feel like training, etc., etc. So a male coach has got to be aware of all of this and have an understanding of these matters. It's very important.
Wow. Friend, I mean, I could sit here and as you're talking, I'm thinking of things. The professional game at the moment in South Africa, the ladies don't actually play in decent stadiums, or do they?
No, I think it's improved a lot, honestly, from what it used to be. I mean, the girls were often given the worst field in the back of beyond. Invariably, there's no change room, no toilets, invariably. And this still happens in some of the regions, whatever, that there's no facilities. But when it comes to Hollywood, Sassel, whatever, I think things have improved a lot, and the girls now have better facilities in the main.
Better doesn't mean to say that it's on par with the men's.
No, I don't. Often I don't think you'll ever get parity. It's like with money. People always say, the women are better, they must get paid the same as the men. That doesn't happen in most of the world. Yes, some big countries, USA, the woman had to take US soccer to court to get it done. England volunteered, some of the European countries, that their players are paid the same. But I think you're always going to have that disparity, and that's why the CAF and thing implemented that PSL teams must have a women's team, because then they will have access to better facilities, better support, better.
We're talking about them being professional. Are they professional? Or do they work and they train afternoon, so they have a job?
Generally, yes. You have probably the few exceptions like Sundowns where they have a big budget, like with the men. They can pay their players enough that they don't have to work. I'm not sure of the other clubs, but generally the players go to school in the main, or varsity with the varsity teams, or work. They have to work and then come and train. So that's a big problem. It's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, if you're working your 8-hour shift and then you still have to come and train
No,
afternoon.
it's very difficult. It's very complicated.
And salary-wise, what are they earning? Just to between
not
between
much.
a hot dog and a Coke and to 20,000 rand a month?
No. I think that again the highest paid team would be Sundowns, and then Royal AMTS Galaxy where there is funding. And then a drop, I don't know exactly what they earn. It could be 15,000, 10,000. But in the lower leagues, I think it's probably 5. I'm not actually sure. But it's not a lot of money. It's nothing like the men. Absolutely nothing like the men.
Friend, our time has expired. The watch doesn't stop. Time is gone. It's been exciting. For me, it's been really an eye-opener, and I've known you for many years. You don't know, but I was watching you at Sarelhatting Park. But we've come to the end of the show. I want to thank you. I think it's for anyone who's watching today and listening, obviously. It gives you a bit more clarity on where ladies football is going, what Fran has done and continues to do for ladies football. I think one day we'll need a statue for Fran. I don't know where we're going to put it, but we're going to create one. But it's that time of the day or evening where we say thank you for watching. Take care of yourself. And remember, your character matters. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. No, thanks.
Elias, can you take a picture now?